Good afternoon, everyone. The time is now 1 o'clock. We'll give everyone another minute or so to log on before we begin. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is Jenna Chasson from the Louisiana Department of Education. Happy to provide you all with some early childhood provider updates this afternoon. This is our rescheduled monthly call that should have taken place last Thursday, but due to Hurricane Ida, it was moved to this Thursday at 1 o'clock. So thank you all for joining us. This session is also being recorded and we'll post the deck and the video on our website as well for anyone who can't join us at this time today. We know a lot of folks around the state are still dealing with the impacts of Hurricane Ida. So we are sending out our thoughts and prayers to all those impacted by the storm. We know even if you don't live in an impacted area, many of you have felt the effects of the storm on our state, across our state, these past 2 weeks. And so know that we are thinking and praying for all of you who have been impacted. We wanted to make sure to reschedule last week's call for today because we know you all probably have some questions and some things that are top of mind related to the storm, and then other things that are just really important in early childhood right now as it comes to a COVID response as well. So we will go ahead and get started. Just a reminder that as I go through today's slides, we do have the chat open, and so you can feel free throughout today's presentation to enter any questions in the chat. We will take some time at the end to answer any of your questions that we don't answer through the slides today. So we will be bringing you all some updates on Hurricane Ida and our response, some COVID-19 updates regarding business supports, our child care assistance program, licensing, teaching and learning. We also have a guest speaker today from Tulane University TIPES program, who will talk to us all today about mental health resources that are available to us all. And so really happy to have on our guest speaker today, Dr. Allison Booth-Triggs, who will talk to us later on in today's webinar about the Tulane University TIPES program and mental health resources. We'll begin with some Hurricane Ida updates. As a result of Hurricane Ida, the federal government has approved a disaster declaration for 25 parishes in Louisiana that are listed here on this slide. One of the most important pieces of information for you all today is reopening forms for centers in those impacted parishes on the last slide will provide the department with critical information and should be completed by communities in all affected areas. So we need all type 1, 2, and 3 licensed sites and all CCAP certified family child care and in-home providers in those disaster declared parishes to complete the appropriate reopening forms by Tuesday, September 14th at 5 p.m. The forms are available here in this slide. I'm sure we'll be dropping them in the chat as well. It is so important for type 1, 2, 3 CCAP certified family childcare and in-home providers to fill out these forms if you are in those impacted parishes. This form can be completed online on a computer or on your mobile device, via fax, via mail, or you can reach out to your CCR&R if you need assistance in submitting. We know many of you still may be struggling with internet, with electricity. So please reach out to your CCR&R if you need assistance in submitting these forms. And just a reminder that failure to submit this form may result in suspension of license. If you have any questions about reopening, please call the number here on your screen, or you can email ldelicensing@la.gov. It's so important for us to have a really good handle on all licensed sites in those disaster parishes. We also wanted to bring you an update about the ARPA grant. And so it was previously required that childcare providers be open by September 1st to receive the ARPA stabilization grant. Due to the impact of Hurricane Ida on the region, those centers who applied timely but were closed on September 1st due to Hurricane Ida will still qualify for the ARPA grant. Please, you can go ahead and contact the provider help desk, email ldecap@la.gov, or you can enter a ticket at the provider help desk if you have any questions or need assistance regarding the ARPA grant. But just wanted to give you all this update. If you were closed due to Hurricane Ida on September 1st, as long as you submitted a timely application, you will still qualify for the ARPA grant. On August 5th, the department released that ARPA stabilization grant round 1 application to all qualified childcare providers, type 1, 2, and 3 licensed childcare centers, as well as CCAP certified in-home and family childcare providers. The deadline to submit the application was August 19th. You can see here on your screen, this was our previously released grant round 1 of funds timeline. You see we have some regions released on September 13th, another wave on September 20th, and the last wave on September 27th. In the spring of 2022, we will change the regional timeline for the release of round 2 funds for the ARPA stabilization grant. So this slide is really just a reminder of the release of those ARPA grant funds. That application was due back on August 19th. Childcare providers that received LCAP grants received a survey to complete from Postal Lake and Netterville. Due to recent impacts of Hurricane Ida, the LCAP grant survey deadline has been extended. If you are not in an impacted parish, please make every effort to complete the survey by the deadline previously communicated to you. But we have extended this timeline due to Hurricane Ida. All providers must submit the LCAP grant survey by Thursday, September 30th, 2021. If you feel like you did not receive the survey, if you haven't seen it come in your inbox, please check your spam junk folder for an email. It would come from info@ldoepnsurvey.com with the subject LDOE LCAP grant survey unique link. If you need the survey resent, please email us info@ldoepnsurvey.com with your provider number and facility name. Please note that the survey must be completed on a desktop browser. Mobile devices are not supported for this survey. Participation in the survey is required. Failure to complete the survey may impact future relief grant funding opportunities, and the provider will be automatically chosen for an audit of the LCAP grant. So please, if you're a recipient of the LCAP grants, you must complete that survey by Thursday, September 30th. We also have an update on CCAP family redetermination extensions. To ensure families continue to receive their CCAP services in light of the pandemic and Hurricane Ida, redetermination cases have been extended for a 3-month period. September cases have been extended to December 31st. October cases have been extended to January 31st, and November cases have been extended to February 28th. Please note that letters and notices have and will be mailed to CCAP participants and providers regarding this update. We also wanted to update you all on Hurricane Ida CCAP resources for our families that are experiencing homelessness as a result of Hurricane Ida. Families who are experiencing homelessness by lacking a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence may qualify for CCAP for up to 90 days without evidence of employment and training activity requirements. They must apply for CCAP through the department. Any questions concerning CCAP can be addressed by contacting us at the number on your screen or emailing ldecap@la.gov. There is a child care recovery fund that the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children, in partnership with Agenda for Children, is collecting. They're collecting donations for licensed early learning centers and registered family homes in Louisiana with financial assistance to aid their recovery efforts in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Ida. The Louisiana Policy Institute for Children is working with the Child Care Association of Louisiana and the department to understand the needs of the providers. LPIC has a goal of raising $500,000. Donations to this fund include a $100,000 award by the Blue Cross Blue Shield Foundation of Louisiana. Donations will be distributed by the Policy Institute to childcare providers in partnership with local childcare resource and referral agencies and/or early childhood lead agencies in regions affected by Hurricane Ida. You can learn more about the fund or donate through the link on this slide. Federal agencies, nonprofits, the private sector, and FEMA continue to increase response and recovery efforts following Ida's landfall in Louisiana. These supports include FEMA disaster assistance, SBA disaster loans, blue tarps, cleanup, and disaster unemployment. We have some links here on this slide that should hopefully make it easier for anyone in those impacted parishes to access any of these resources and supports available to you all. These supports also include transitional sheltering assistance and disaster supplemental nutritional assistance. Providers should also consider additional local, community-specific resources that may provide more immediate assistance for some needs. Some additional local information may be available through 211. So again, these are some links that could be helpful to you all, to your employees, and to the families that you serve regarding disaster assistance. Ready Rosie and the Center for School Behavioral Health at Mental Health America of Greater Houston have collaborated to provide a free resource for families in early childhood sites. Ready Rosie is a teaching strategies partner. It's an early education tool that helps families, schools, early childhood programs, and communities across the nation deepen and scale their family engagement efforts. The virtual toolkit, linked here in this slide, Preparing for a Storm and Its Aftermath, provides teachers and families with information and resources to prepare children for natural disasters and assist them in coping with the aftermath. So we encourage you all to access this virtual toolkit to use it with the children that you serve. We'll move next into some COVID-19 updates. The following COVID-19 resources remain available to you all. We have our updated OPH guidelines for COVID, and we're continuing to work with OPH on increased flexibilities to these guidelines. So just a reminder about these resources linked here on this slide and available on our website. In response to a surge in COVID-19 cases across the state, just a reminder that the governor has reinstated stricter mask mandates. The Office of Public Health Child Care guidelines were updated to include the following requirements and recommendations. All staff must continue to mask while indoors, regardless of vaccination status. Parents and visitors must mask while in childcare facilities. While outdoors, fully vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals do not need to mask if they adhere to physical distancing requirements. Since children under the age of 12 are ineligible for vaccination, it is strongly recommended that children between the ages of 2 and 5 wear a mask. Children 5 years and older must wear a mask. And once again, all of this can be found in those updated OPH guidelines. Sites should have an isolation room or area that can be used to isolate a sick child or staff member. If COVID-19 is confirmed in a child or staff member, you should follow the CDC guidance on home isolation for confirmed or suspected COVID-19. Identify those within close contact and communicate the requirement to quarantine for 14 days. Also, please continue to follow the CDC guidance on how to disinfect your building. In response to the critical staffing shortages in acute care hospitals, LDOE, in partnership with the Louisiana Department of Health, opened the CCAP pandemic application to support essential hospital personnel in Tier 1 or 2 hospital settings. Essential hospital personnel includes the following: nurses, LPNs, RNs, APRN, nursing assistants, therapists, mental health workers, emergency medical technicians, laboratory staff, nutritional staff, janitorial services, and other employees that provide direct care in these identified facilities. To apply, essential hospital personnel must submit a completed CCAP Pandemic Protective Services Crisis application, along with a signed letter on hospital letterhead verifying title and employment. Applications will be accepted through October 31st. Upon approval, certification for childcare services will be valid for 12 months. If essential hospital personnel need childcare beyond traditional center hours, such as nighttime care, the caregiver can become a CCAP certified in-home provider that will come into their home to provide care. And we'll move next into some business support updates. Many providers have experienced changing financial situations which directly impact their taxes. The department has contracted with professional tax consultants to provide tax support services to Type 3 providers. These professionals will provide up to 2 hours of tax consultation to a limited number of Type 3 providers. These services are now being offered and will be available until June 30th, 2022, or until the contracted service hours are expended. Type 3 providers can begin using this interest form to schedule their consultation, and providers can begin collecting financial documents to ensure the best use of their consultation time. For more information, you can contact shalyn.jones@la.gov. The department has partnered with First Children's Finance to offer a series of advanced level business trainings to Type 3 centers over the course of the next year. Participants completing the training will also have the opportunity to receive business consultation. Topics include a wide variety of childcare specific issues and will be hosted at 4 different times from now until March of 2022. These trainings will be Pathways approved. Register with First Children's Finance. And for more information, you can contact shalyn.jones@la.gov. We also have some CCAP updates. In addition to the LCAP grant survey that I talked about earlier in today's presentation, Postal Wait and Netterville will conduct random audits of LCAP grants. As indicated in the assurance statement of the LCAP grant application, records of expenses must be available for LDOE and our authorized personnel. Contact will be made by LDOE and PNN to providers selected for the audit. We have a few licensing updates also to share today. Per federal requirements and effective September 30th, all early learning staff on the premises of a center and accessible to children shall have current certification in CPR, infant, child, and adult, and in first aid. CPR PFA training can be completed online during the pandemic, but must include a visual demonstration by the instructor, as well as a return demonstration to be observed by the instructor that is observable via Skype, Zoom, or another live platform. The department has created a list of approved CPR and PFA courses. If you have any questions, you can contact the Division of Licensing by phone or by email at ldelicensing@la.gov. The department continues to receive serious incident reports where children are being left alone and therefore unsupervised. Supervision should include strategies that promote care to create a safe environment for children. In an effort to reduce the number of children being left unsupervised, consider the following. Know the number and names of children present. Have clear and simple rules for children. Identify children before and after transitioning spaces. Conduct name-to-face counts on a regular basis and as needed throughout the day. Be able to see and hear children at all times, including children using the restroom. We also want to remind you today about motor vehicle passenger checks. This is, as always, so important to remind everyone of. A visual passenger check of a vehicle is required to ensure that no child is left in a vehicle. It is imperative that vehicles are adequately inspected for children before staff exit the vehicle. We know right now in September, we have very, very hot temperatures. This is really crucial that everyone is doing this. A staff person shall physically walk through the vehicle and inspect all seat surfaces, under all seats, and in all enclosed spaces and recesses of the vehicle interior. The staff member shall record the time of the visual passenger check and sign the log indicating that no child was left in the vehicle. Please make sure that your staff has received proper training and repeat the training if needed. We also wanted to let you know about the recent Bulletin 137 and Bulletin 139 revisions. Every 3 years, Bulletin 137 must be reviewed by a team of stakeholders to ensure regulations are current and to ensure they meet the needs of providers and requirements of the department. Therefore, Bulletin 137 has been revised. Updates to Bulletin 139 were made as well to be in compliance with federal requirements. Please note that the new versions of these bulletins have an effective date of September 20th. In the next few weeks, the department will schedule several provider trainings for licensed childcare centers and home providers. Blast emails and newsletters will have additional information. The department will require at least one person from each center to attend training. 2 continuing education hours will be given for attendance. We'll move next to teaching and learning updates. Knowing that many of you probably have some questions about 2021-2022 accountability. We know that children and the adults who support them have very different needs across the state right now, and we are eager to work with you to make sure you have what you need to best support children. We will be working with community network lead agencies affected by Hurricane Ida to make plans that are responsive to community needs. Community network lead agencies will be coordinating local observations in their network, submitting those plans to the department, and will be adhering to the guidance from our early childhood team. They will be taking into consideration public health considerations, as well as site-specific health and safety protocols when scheduling and planning observations. Implementing the health and safety precautions such as masking and distancing, successfully employed during the 2020-2021 school year, and determining virtual versus in-person observations as capacity and public health needs dictate. As you prepare for observations, please be on the lookout for more information from your community network lead agency, and don't hesitate to reach out if there are specific procedures they should be aware of at your site. In addition to the local observations, every year the P-Card Center at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette conducts third-party observations. Those third-party observations will begin this year on September 16th. The P-Card Center will continue to collaborate with lead agencies and sites and follow best practices developed during last school year to mitigate the risk associated with COVID-19. They will do things such as contacting the sites 1 to 5 days ahead of scheduled observations to confirm details for upcoming observations and ensure health and safety is prioritized. They will provide virtual and in-person observation options to sites, and they will observe site-level health and safety protocols as well as state and local health authority guidance. The department will continue working with local lead agencies and communities affected by Hurricane Ida in order to develop a plan for third-party observations that is responsive to community needs. We know that children are best set up for future outcomes when they experience high-quality interactions during their early years, which is why more than 90% of teachers reported that the feedback they received last year was helpful to their professional development. The department has developed a wide range of resources to support you as directors in supporting teachers. Some of those resources include the class video library that's linked here on this slide. It includes examples of high quality interactions to help with professional development, an early childhood page that includes guidance for connecting Tier 1 curricula with the class tool, and many more resources available on our website. For the next portion of today, we will be talking about mental health resources, and we are so excited to welcome a guest speaker to today's webinar. Today we have Dr. Allison Booth Trigg of the Tykes Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation Program to speak with us about the importance of self-care and the resources that are available to childcare providers here in Louisiana. Dr. Trigg, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Jenna. So Karen Powell asked me to speak last week. And last week, I think it was still important to think about our own mental health and the mental health of people that we work with. But now this week, it's even more important. So let's get started. I want to think just a little bit about some self-care strategies during difficult times, and then also make sure that everyone is fully aware of what Tykes has to offer for you, your families, and teachers in early childhood settings. So let's go to the next slide. Just a reminder, I think sometimes when a lot is going on in our world, especially as helpers and caregivers, as everyone on this phone call is, we start to think of taking care of ourselves as being self-indulgent and something we should put off until everything else gets done. And I just want to remind everyone that self-care is really self-preservation. So keep that in mind. And here are just some things that you can do when you're thinking about, I have so many things going on. If I've been impacted by hurricanes, we've all been impacted by the pandemic. And so here are some ideas and things that you can think about. Be thinking about where is your level of stress. And if it's high, then definitely pay attention to what we're talking about today and think about what support you might need. Look at what's on your plate. Prioritize what you have in front of you. Are there some things that can be done later? Think about what needs to be done right now. Make a list for yourself. Start thinking about what is helpful for you. What are the things that are self-care for you? It's going to be different for everybody. So not everyone is going to want to take a long bath or go to a spa. Somebody might just want to sit down and binge a Netflix series for 2 hours on a Saturday morning. If that's what works for you, that's self-care for you. So don't let someone else prescribe what is supportive for you. And then find a little time for yourself. And this, again, does not mean you need an hour, but think about where are the times and the moments during my day that I can focus on what I need. So that might be while you're sitting there at nap time, trying to pat a child's back. Once that child goes to sleep, Maybe take 5 minutes and sit there and enjoy that everyone is sleeping. Take those little moments and then delegate. This is true at work and at home. So sometimes when we delegate, we feel like, okay, it's not going to get done in the way that I want it to be done, so I'm just going to do it all myself. But that is what can lead to burnout. So sometimes it's okay if the laundry isn't folded in the way that I want it. Somebody else folded it, or maybe somebody else put it away, even if everything isn't in the right spot. Learn about and think about those things that you can delegate to someone else. The next one I have quotes on because, depending on your job, you might be working virtually. You might be going into childcare centers. You might be having a difference on that, depending on if you have to have a closure for COVID, et cetera. But think about how you can transition your mind from home to work and work to home. So if you're driving to a center, think about, all right, what am I going to prepare for during the day? But then when you are coming home, think about what you can set aside so that you can focus on being at home and not carry your home concerns to work and your work concerns to home, because that helps us be less overwhelmed during our days. Think about if you're a person that needs to say yes more to some things or no more to some things. We all have our own boundaries on that. There are some of us that just say, yes, I'll do anything, and then we become overwhelmed. And there are also those of us that might need to say yes to some more things that are good for us. And when we usually say no. And then think about your hot buttons. If anyone on here has worked with the Tykes consultants, they may have had this in one of their trainings. Think about what are those things that push your buttons, that kind of get you upset. If you can be aware of those ahead of time, then you can think about how to respond in the moment better. And then think about what kind of support can you find for yourself if you need it. This might be in a peer support group, but this also can be through a mental health consultant. Even if your center isn't currently working with a mental health consultant, you can reach out for a follow-up visit. So if you're a teacher and you have that consultant's contact information, go ahead and reach out to them or ask your director to. Next slide, please. Hopefully, there we go. This is a flyer that I'm hoping most of you have seen before. It's on our website. The department has shared it multiple times, and it goes through all of the different services that Tykes offers for early childhood educators and families. So we can work with centers programmatically, we can support teachers and directors if there are child-centered concerns, we can help design behavior management plans, we provide professional development. And one of the things that we often work with in this professional development is we work with the idea of self-care and managing stress. So if that is something that you are seeing happening in your center, we are ready to help with that in greater detail than we're doing today. We also can do social skills supports for young children. We can help with family engagement, and I wrote down some of the things that Jenna talked about earlier about enhancing family engagement. So I'm really excited that there's some other opportunities for that. So if you don't know about any of these, please go to the Tykes website. I'll have that in here later, and you will find this flyer so that you can know what to ask for. Next slide, please. We also have a tele-MHC request. And this, it pretty much, you go to our website, you can scan this QR code right now if you want to just get it on your phone so you can do it later. This can be shared with anyone who is caring for a young child. So anyone caring for children 0 to 5 who might need some extra support. So it could be a teacher, it could be a parent, it could be a grandparent, etc. And sometimes the calls that we get are us helping that caregiver think about what they can do to make some changes right now. Sometimes the consultant that you talk to may have a conversation with the person who requests the support and then help them find services or referrals that are available in their community. So people can really request support in anything having to do with caring with a 0 to 5-year-old, and then we'll help you find what is available if you think more support is needed. So this is always available. It doesn't have to be about the hurricane, but we want to make sure that the information is out there for parents who are concerned about how their child might be adjusting, or for parents who are concerned about how they are adjusting, because we need to support caregivers in order to take care of young children. Next slide. And I'm going to spend the last bit of our time thinking about a simple self-care activity that you can do anywhere, anytime. Most of you have probably heard of mindfulness before. So I just want to dive into it a little bit and take us through a little mindfulness activity and sort of talk about some of the things that can be useful when we practice mindfulness at points throughout our day. So when we hear the term mindfulness, I want you to think about, is my mind full, like the thought bubble here on the left, or am I being aware of what's happening in the moment, mindful, like the thought bubble on the right? So let's think some about what is mindfulness. Next slide. And mindfulness is really being in the moment. So observing whatever is happening in the moment that we're in, whether it's good or bad, not judging ourselves or our reactions, but just being aware of what's happening. So paying attention in this particular way and not judging what is happening. And I think a picture of a beach is really great here, because being on a beach is often, or with water, is often a time that we slow down a little bit and we notice things like what the water feels like on our skin, what the sun feels like, how we might be enjoying that moment. So I want to think with you some about how to take that slowing down and applying it at all times of our lives, not just when we're doing something like swimming or going to a lake or a beach or looking out at a pretty vista. Next slide, please. So why mindfulness? Why is this something that can help with our self-care? Well, we know from research looking at mindfulness is that mindfulness can help direct our attention to what's happening as it happens. And by doing this over time, we start to be better at responding to what is happening instead of reacting to what is happening. So if you think about being in a classroom and you have one of those children that really pushes your buttons, you know how you have to step back and think about, how should I respond to this child in a way that's not snapping at them? Mindfulness helps us to do that. It also helps us with our relationships at home, helps us to respond instead of react. And it also can help improve how we think. It can help us recognize our feelings and what we're thinking about for others so that we can be calmer and have less negative feelings. So a lot of good stuff is associated with practicing mindfulness at times throughout our day. Next slide. So some core concepts if you're thinking about how to incorporate some mindfulness into your day. It's not judging. We often judge ourselves very harshly. And I think sometimes that keeps us from being aware and really paying attention to each moment. So when we're being mindful, the key component is not judging yourself, not judging your reaction, not judging your thoughts. And it's also not trying to be anything. So not trying to be better, not trying to be calmer, just accepting where you are at that moment, letting go of what maybe you want to change or do differently, and approaching it from a place of a beginner. So really almost having a childlike wonder about what's happening right now. What is happening in my life right now? Am I brushing my teeth? Am I eating a grape? What does that grape taste like? That is practicing mindfulness. I'm sure every single one of us has had the experience of sitting down in front of a television and eating a snack. And maybe you have a bag of chips, and before you know it, you're at the end of the bag of chips and you kind of realize they were tasty and crunchy, but that's about it. If you were practicing mindfulness while eating that snack, you would be thinking, oh, this chip is crunchy. This chip is tasty. This chip is really good. And probably would eat a little bit less of it because you're thinking about each minute of that experience of eating that snack. Mindfulness is also patience, and it's trusting that you can do it. It's not about being calm. It's not about not thinking. So it's not meditation. It's not about being disciplined. And it's also not something that's just going to fix it all. But it's a practice of slowing down during your day. Next slide, please. So when we are being mindful, we're really practicing having compassion for ourselves. We're all helpers on this call. We have a lot of compassion for others. I'm asking you today to have a little more compassion for yourself. And this is going to help you with your emotional well-being again. It can help boost happiness. It can help you handle difficult emotions, which we all probably have a lot of right now. And it helps us to motivate others. So helping ourselves helps our interactions with others and helps us to stop being hard on ourselves. Next slide, please. So now I'd like to do a bit of a mindfulness practice with you. During part of this, you do need to have your eyes open, but feel free to close your eyes. For the other parts, get yourselves comfortable. And I'm going to take us through a couple of breaths, and then I'm going to read through a way to practice mindfulness right here and right now. So let's take one deep breath. Breathe in and breathe out. Let's do one more. I think a cat just fell on my chair. That wasn't very calming. Let's do one more. Breathe in and then breathe out. All right. Now, take a second to look around your environment and notice to yourself 5 things you can see in your environment. All right. Now, notice 4 things you can feel from where you're sitting or standing right now. 4 things. Then think about and notice 3 things you can hear. Now notice 2 things you can smell. And notice 1 thing you can taste. It never fails that every time I do this, I'm a little surprised again at how much I can see in my environment that I didn't see just the 30 seconds before I started doing this. It's kind of quiet where I am right now. And for the noticing what I could hear, I realized it seemed like I could hear my heart beating. Typically when I'm going throughout my day, if I'm not practicing mindfulness, I'm not aware of my heart beating or maybe of my chest expanding when I breathe in. Or I might not smell the lotion that I put on my hands earlier. But when practicing mindfulness, you start to recognize that there's so many things happening right in the present moment. And it helps us to have that slowing down. So I encourage you to practice this exercise, or if you're interested in learning about other ways of practicing mindfulness, just get on Google and Google mindfulness practice, and you will find all sorts of great ideas on how to incorporate this into your daily life. There are mindfulness driving. You can be mindfulness while brushing your teeth, mindfulness eating, which I talked about earlier. And it's not something you're expected to do all the time, but maybe do this as part of your coming from home to work and work to home, as a way to leave behind what you just did and prepare for where you're going next. I think that's a great place to start. We also, if you're interested in more mindfulness or other ideas, let's switch to the next slide. We also have several Wellness Wednesdays that Tykes did for about 4 or 5 months recorded, and they are on our YouTube website. And so some of those are on mindfulness, and I encourage you to go watch them. They're really usually pretty short. They're about 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes. And we cover things like mindfulness, self-care. We have chair yoga. We have guided meditations, lots of different ways to incorporate a little bit of self-care into your routine. Next slide, please. Whomever's doing, I got the person so relaxed who's doing the slides. And on our website, you can find, here we go, on our website, which is that Tykes. And if you scan the QR code earlier, that will take you right there. We have links to our YouTube page that has the videos I was just talking about. We also have some longer trainings that you can complete on your own time for Pathways credits, and one is on self-care and trauma. So I think it's something that will be really helpful right now. And then we have links to our Facebook page and to our Instagram page. So I don't know if we have the capacity to do questions or not, you can also, if anyone wants to send a question in, my email address is also on our website, and I'll be glad to help hook you up with a mental health consultant or with tele-MHC. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Trigg, so much for being with us today and sharing those helpful resources. I really appreciated your mindfulness practice exercise. That was really, really great. And I know everyone enjoyed it. Thank you for sharing this and more about Tykes and the program. Really happy to be in partnership with you all. And thank you again for coming on and sharing. I don't think we've gotten any questions in the chat. Folks were welcome to input questions, and I don't think we've gotten any in particular for you. But thank you so much for being on and presenting with us today.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Trigg. I did want to share one additional slide on some additional mental health resources. So we do have some that we wanted to make you all aware of that are available from the federal government in response to Hurricane Ida. So in addition to the Tykes program resources that Dr. Trigg just elaborated on, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has a multilingual disaster distress helpline to provide immediate crisis counseling for people experiencing emotional distress in an affected disaster area. And so the number is there on your screen that you all could call or text. This is the Federal Disaster Distress Helpline. So with that, before we get to upcoming events, I wanted to pause and just highlight a few of the questions that we got in the chat today. We do have some questions about folks who are looking to reopen. So we have some people asking about completing that reopening form and saying that, asking about the process to reopen, saying they've already done the reopening form, but maybe they can reopen even sooner than that date, which is great. We want everyone to reopen safely to take care of our children. That's awesome if you can. But if you have any specific questions like that for your site, feel free to contact the Division of Licensing because they can help you walk through how to reopen safely even after you complete that reopening form if you're looking at a different date than what was indicated there. So you can contact the Division of Licensing or go ahead and contact your licensing consultant if you need more specific information about reopening your site. So another question that came in the chat is about an extension for staff meeting CPR requirement. If you are in an impacted area and you have questions about finding CPR trainers, fitting that in now as an impact of the storm, you all again can go ahead and talk with your licensing consultant or contact the Division of Licensing to talk about those specific site-by-site situations. We had a question come in about the mandated reporter training. Does that count towards the required hours? And yes, it does count. It is worth 1.5 hours. Just a reminder too, we had some questions about who qualifies for that pandemic CCAP that we talked about on today's call. At this time, we worked with the Department of Health to identify personnel and sites. And so it is just personnel at tier 1 or tier 2 hospital settings that are eligible for that pandemic CCAP. And we worked with LDH to identify who the individuals are and those sites, those locations that should be eligible for pandemic CCAP. And we did enter into the chat the links for the reopening forms, because I know many of you need access to those today. Okay, so we'll move into upcoming events. Just wanted to let you all know about our next provider webinar. which is on for our regularly scheduled time, which is the first Thursday of the month. So that would be Thursday, October 7th at 1 p.m. The Zoom is linked here in this deck. So we hope that you all join us again. If you know of anyone who was not able to make today's webinar, again, we know folks, it was a different date since it was rescheduled from last Thursday. We also know some folks might still be struggling with connectivity, with power. And so it is recorded and it will be available on our website. So if you know anyone who was not able to tune in today, please let them know that it is available there. Our next call will be on October 7th. And I'll leave you once again, as always, with our contact information. We know that you all have a lot of site-specific questions and situations happening right now in response to COVID, in response to stimulus funding, in response to the hurricane. And so please feel free to reach out to us. Numbers and emails are listed there on this last slide. We continue to be available. Please reach out to us so that we can help you answer any questions and support you however we can. So thank you all. Once again, you all are in our thoughts and prayers here at the department. Keep doing the wonderful work that you do. Thank you all for doing it. And we will see you back here in a few weeks on October 7th for our next webinar. Feel free to reach out to us in the meantime for any help that you need. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.